All right, I think Peggy, that was great. Peggy's gonna demonstrate how to reconstitute your honey. I think this is a good time of year to talk about that. Everybody's honey that's hardened up.
I'm gonna call on our wonderful president.
I will help you.
I just found out about this gizmo and I never knew about it. And I'd love to know how many of you know what a sovide is? How many people? Oh, see, you guys are- you're way ahead of me, way ahead of me. I'm gonna pass these around for anybody who does not know.
Peggy, do you want to tell us what it's for the people
Yeah.
that don't know?
Yeah. I called George, our wonderful president. And you put the meat in a vacuum bag or a Ziploc bag. And you put it in the water and you set the temperature. And the temperatures are very, very low. And you let them cook for hours. And the booklet tells you how long to do it and so on and so forth. So anyway, for the honey, I'm gonna heat this up, heat the water up. I'm gonna put my glass jars in here so that I can get the crystals out of it. So now George, who has used it, is gonna tell you a little more than I.
So what temperature, Peggy, again, do you want to set that sous vide for? So
Here.
around 100,
Yeah,
100, no higher than 110, they say, right? Don't
Right.
put your honey higher than 110.
right.
So this is Peggy's version, right? Now I'm gonna show you my version. This is my version of the same thing.
I love it.
Anyone know why I use this size version? Buckets, right?
Bigger go home.
Buckets, go big or go home, right? I'm not putting bottles in here, so. You know, the one thing that, so I will fill this with water and put my 5-gallon buckets of honey in here to decrystallize. Now, on the bottom of both this and that, it's helpful to get water underneath either your bottles of honey or your buckets of honey, because the bottom will stay crystallized. So I don't think those would fit in Peggy's, but you get the idea. You would probably put some sort of fancy something in the bottom of that pot. And the bottom of this, I just put sticks and put it in there so the water can get underneath the bucket. And then at 110 degrees in 24 hours, your bucket will be completely decrystallized. Now, I know there's lots of ways to decrystallize a bucket, and if you're trying to decrystallize 5 to 10 buckets at a time, there may be a more efficient way to wrap them with a big blanket or something like that. But if you just need to decrystallize a bucket or two, this really works well. Now, you gotta convince your significant other that this is worth having somewhere in the house, water, but or stick it somewhere for a day where it won't be noticed. But as far as, it's amazing that with the sous vide and the water underneath the buckets, the whole bucket is completely decrystallized, which is nice, because if you're gonna then bottle it, or if you're gonna make creamed honey out of it, you want all the crystals gone. And if you don't get the water underneath, you won't do it. So I highly recommend this for bottles, and I highly recommend this for buckets.
And how are you heating your water?
Sous vide, so basically just take that sous vide and just stick it on the side of this, So that's how I heat the water in this. So same sous vide, just different size container.
Keeping the lids off for the buckets?
I'm putting the lids on the buckets. Yeah, because who knows what's falling from the sky, right? So I didn't bring my lid today, but the lid would be on the bucket.
You put an insulator or cover over top of the whole thing so that it's more efficient?
I guess you could. I haven't done that yet.
It only takes a day anyway, so I mean, what are you trying to save? 2 to 3 hours?
Couple bucks of electricity. Not even that.
If you don't wanna buy a feeding trough, if the bucket fit in most cooler boxes.
Yeah.
When I used to use a sous vide, it was a cooler box. You set your bucket in there, fill it with water, and then you put your sous vide in there.
Yeah, cooler box.
24 hours later, you got a bucket of liquid.
And how long does it stay after it's recrystallized?
It usually stays liquid for a while. I don't see it. I guess it depends on where you put the honey, whether or not you put it outside or in the cool, or.
How well you
Do you have a question over here? But I also used to. Anyway, let's take the question, because otherwise I'll go off on a tangent.
George, what about the honey buckets with the spout? Can you put those buckets in, or do they have to be, is that a completely sealed bucket with no spout?
They can be spouted.
They can be, just has to be
However, I had one mishap with that.
the spout not being tight,
Although the honey seals from going out, sometimes it doesn't seal from water
going in, that's what I'm worried about.
Yeah, I've only had it happen 1 out of like 15 buckets with spouts.
Well, that means that your honey level was lower than the
That
level
is
of the
correct.
water.
That is
The only way
correct.
That would happen.
Wait, so if the honey's filled in the bucket, it's not gonna come in?
If your
Yeah,
honey
he's gonna
level
push out
is
harder.
higher than the level of the water in the bucket, the
Uh-huh.
pressure's gonna be outward.
Okay,
If it's
The other way
the
around.
other way around, the pressure's gonna be inward, then you have to worry about that, and because it's heavier than water, it's gonna stay sunk, and you will have that difference in level.
gotcha.
Interestingly enough, I poured that water off, let it sit for a while and never fermented.
Oh, cool, okay.
So
There were
just
some other-
if you pass around the booklet, so you could see if you wanna make some notes, it tells you about the temperatures and it has a bunch of recipes in it.
We're bringing our
I
moms to
leave-
your house.
I kind of leave instead of putting it all in bottles, I just leave it in buckets until I'm ready to bottle it. It's just, for me, it's a lot easier to decrystallize one bucket than 100 or 50 bottles, right? It just, I don't know, but to each his own, you know what I mean, like.
What about plastic bottles?
I actually use a plastic bottle. I don't label my bottles until I'm gonna get them ready to sell. They crystallize in my case of bottles, I'll take them out, I'll put them in there. They crystallize it, and then I'm gonna sell them.
That's a good point. Don't put the label on the bottle until you're ready to give it away or sell it, because it probably wouldn't do well in the sous vide arrangement.
Question with regard to the crystallization of the honey, does it recrystallize faster if you take it through this decrystallization process? And Mark might be able to answer this because it's kind of related to his, because crystallization is sometimes affected by particulates and stuff in the honey. And I was wondering if your hot honey
Crystallizes.
crystallizes faster than like a regular without.
Yeah, the hot honey does not seem to crystallize, but then again, I'm also using very dry honey and dehydrating it more. So it's really dry.
I don't know the answer to this, but what I have learned this year from, I think, a pretty reputable source, is that to fully decrystallize the honey, 110 is better than 104. That's what I've heard, you know, like if I get all the fine crystals out, that you really want to get the honey to 110, and some people don't like to take their honey to 110. So what relevance that has to do with your question, I'm not sure. But I'm taking all, you know, with the sous vide, I can control exactly what the temperature is. So I'm taking it to 110 because I don't want it to recrystallize, but does anyone know the answer to that about?
I don't, but I have a question for Mark. When they were doing the Varroa treatments to get rid of the beetles, or the Varroa,
Yeah,
and they were doing the temperature treatments,
Yeah.
how high did they bring the temperature?
the bees brought it to 107 for the Africanized for 1 to 2 hours at a time. And for the non-Africanized, they were taking it to 104 to 105 degrees for 1 to 2 hours, I think 5
I was
times.
only asking because of that. I didn't know if they were gonna hire that or not when they did that.
I've heard both numbers mentioned, 104 and 110, and someone told me that 110 more fully decrystallizes
It does.
than 104.
It does.
So
I think the answer is we need to convince the public that crystallized honey is fine.
Yeah.
That's a better answer.
That shows no
That's the thing.
Yeah.
That's exactly why it's fine.
It's all about marketing. I'm marketing the crunchy honey.
Incredible.
Honey, that's right.
yeah, no, I hear you, Carissa. Yes.
George, I have found when I decrystallize that the light honey, even at like maybe 108, 107 degrees, if I do a bottle, at the very bottom of the bottle, I'll still get a very light layer of, like, almost looks like white sugar.
Yeah.
That doesn't, but if you do it in a bucket, you'll get that little layer at the bottom of the bucket and you'll never, then it doesn't recrystallize for quite some time after that.
But again, you take that layer and you jar it up into, little jars
Yeah.
and sell it as crystallized honey, crunchy honey.
Crunchy
I
honey.
mean, my process is it goes from bucket. Ideally, it gets sold quickly, but if it sits in a bucket and it crystallizes, then it basically gets in here at 110 for a day, and then it goes into a bottling tank, and then I let it sit in the bottling tank for a day or two.
Okay.
And let everything that's fine and particulate come to the top, and then I take that top off because I don't want to educate the public about how honey should look.
Thank you, George.
One more question, Leela, maybe it's,
So I don't know if anybody knows the answer to this. One thing that I've wondered is when you sous vide other things or anything, like it's temperature plus a certain amount of time. And if you start to go over that time, maybe things start to denature or change a little bit. And I've always wondered, okay, you don't want to heat the honey over 110 or some people say 104, but is there also kind of a duration at which if you go over that, then you do start to lose some of those raw honey properties? I don't know the answer, but it's something I wonder about. I don't know if anybody else has considered that or if anybody knows.
well, convenience usually has its downsides, right?
But yeah, but it's like, well, it's 12 hours fine, but 25 hours is not so fine.
You know, Patrick?
Anybody know?
Really don't, I was just checking on the marks at this point. I don't know.
Oh,
I
does
think
anybody know?
And
Ed may know.
don't know specifically, but however, they say when you're heating your honey, a longer duration, bring it up to temperature. Is far superior than racing it up to a temperature. So they actually say a 3-day duration for uncrystallizing honey. However, I do similar to what they're doing here, and you want it the next day. But so theoretically, you want to bring it up in temperature increments, and they said 3 days is about the fastest you want to decrystallize honey for it to maintain virtually all of its nutritional value. Are we losing some by doing it in 24? Maybe, but is it negligible? Who knows?
Right.
Sure.
Yeah, makes sense.
So yeah, again, 3 days is what they say to bring it up to temperature. Take that duration to bring it up to temperature. Now, after that, I don't know, but there was a study on that as far as what.
And the instruction book has a whole chart.
Yeah,
on
and with the sous vide, if you want to go to 90 and then go to 95, and it's as simple as just hitting the up button or the down button, so it's really nice to do. And then you know exactly, when you check the temperature in the bucket, it's no different than the temperature in the water, right? So you know exactly what your max temperature is when you're using the sous vide versus some other methods that people use, like double boilers or microwaves or whatever.
Old chest freezers.
Chest freezers, lights, all that. Cool.
Great, thanks, George.
Yeah, no, thanks, Peggy.
Thank you.